With practice, the one-handed swings are going to become more balanced. You'll be able to detect when the sound matches the task. Obviously, we want it to build in speed and be at its greatest as it goes through the imaginary ball. And remember to be patient because you're building range of movement, strength very possibly, and obviously balance and familiarity with the movement. Now, as you then take it to the ground with both hands and you're able to brush the grass in front of your face, not gouging in front of the right foot or missing, and the distance from your feet that you had planned, then you're ready, I'm sure you've already thought this, to take it to a golf ball. Now, if you're lucky enough to have space to do this at home, I obviously encourage you not to use real golf balls, these lovely plastic balls that my mother learned with, as did I, 50 years ago in Scotland, are comparatively safe. So they weigh 3 grams, so they're not going to do a lot of harm. And I've got a lovely big tree that I can whack the ball up into so it doesn't leave the property. Now, here's the process that I'd like you to use for a few days to build, again, the familiarity, the strength, the range of movement, the balance. I've got 7 of them teed up here. Now, this is a personal aside. I had many, many rounds of golf where I had 6 birdies. I never, ever had 7. And I've always thought that, we generally pick a round number and say, well, hit 10 of those and see how it's going. I've always noticed that the hard transition was to get from number 6 to number 7. And so maybe it stuck with me as a personal foible, but I like 7. You'll notice they're teed up higher than one would ever expect to hit an iron. Irons are generally either not teed up, more commonly, or if it's on a par 3, a short hole where you can reach with the iron, you look around for a broken one and just tee it up quite low. These are teed up almost higher than one might even choose to hit a driver. But there's a purpose to this because the balance and the familiarity with the swing and the familiarity also with the distance and height from the ball are all very important, and this helps develop it. So you prepare by holding your hands down by your left side because they hang naturally in a way that's beneficial. Then pick up the club and extend your left arm and attach the right hand covering your left thumb. Now, then we do what I call bias. You rotate the left elbow out to look toward the imaginary target, and that raises the shoulder and tilts your body slightly. Then the club often is sort of languishing over here in front of your right foot, which is not where the ball is going to be. So you have to keep in these shapes, but rectify that by using your wrist to bring the club back to where you imagine the ball would be more likely positioned. Only then do you look at the club face and decide if it's square and adjust it in your fingers without losing these shapes. Then keeping the upper arm against your body, but the lower arm clear, you tip over, and of course your legs straighten, club goes down, and it comes towards you. And when it gets to the top of an imaginary ball, I usually then say, use your knees to drop your head, your tailbone, and the club, and then waddle that to the ball. Well, on this occasion, you're going to tip over until you're a couple of inches above the plastic ball, and then crouch. And you'll hover the club where the base of the club is no lower than the base of the ball. In other words, right at the top of the tee. You'll also be cautious to make sure that you offer the ball to the outer 2/3 of the club. So if I were to use a Sharpie pen and draw 2 lines on the face vertically, dividing the club up into 3 pieces, you would be offering the ball and intending to hit on the second line. So then you'll do a wooden waggle just because it's good familiarity to make sure your distance and balance are good. And then you're going to do this. You're going to start with a replica of the waggle. And about here, where you're passing your right leg, you're just going to hinge your wrist. So the club is, if you were to draw a line down the shaft, pointing generally at the ball, but no higher than about chest high. And then you're going to hit the ball on the toe, as we would call it, and hit it high and left. And then start again. Waggle, add the wrists, hit it high and left. Start again. Waggle, settle, add the wrists, high and left. And you're doing it at much, obviously, slower speed than you've been practicing. I'd suggest you do it at 1/8 speed to start with, because it's very beneficial. You'll be learning how to balance yourself at that slower speed. And when you get 7 of them to go high and left, then you can think about building speed, lowering the tee and eventually taking it away, and then going at full speed, changing clubs, and perhaps even going and trying it on the golf course. I just mentioned teeing up 7 shots and practicing in the garden. These plastic balls are very comparatively safe. And a word about how to tee the ball up, because it's very tempting to use your thumbs to push the tee into the ground, and that's not great for your thumbnails and often quite hard depending on the texture of the grass. So what golfers do is they actually use the golf ball, put the tee between the first and second finger, and use the ball to push the tee into the ground. It's less painful. And if the ball keeps falling off, which is not uncommon, whichever direction it falls, you push the tee in the other direction, and that will rectify that. Now, you'll learn as you go that there are heights of tee that are best favored for particular shots. And so with a driver, I push it in until I sense that I'm close enough to the ground, but sufficiently above it that the top of the club is about halfway up the ball. That's fairly conventional wisdom. With the shorter clubs, you'd want it lower. A fairway wood, for instance, off the tee, if you choose to for tactical or strategic reasons. And you'll push it until you feel the fingers touch the ground. And that's a gauge that is quite helpful. Now, when you start to hit plastic golf balls a little harder in the back garden, I would recommend that you briefly get a little loop of string and attach that around the golf club, because about once a year over the last 50 years, I've seen somebody let go of the club, and it always flies in a very predictable way, about 60 yards over your left shoulder and behind you. I think that's just the nature of the golf swing. So just for security's sake, I'd recommend that you have a little string there until you're confident that that's not going to happen. And obviously it's when it's wet, it's either because it's hot or it's because it's raining, that might actually make that problem a little greater. Now, there are some essentials on the golf course that are useful, particularly for the same reason. If, for instance, it's sweaty, hot, then, and that's, by the way, the reason I use it, one wears a glove. And a glove should be quite snug because it's usually made out of what they call cabretta leather, and it stretches over a period of time. So when you first buy it, this tab, this Velcro tab, would only go about halfway across the tab on the back of the palm. Eventually, you'll find that it stretches, and this reaches all the way over to here. Now, so you want it quite firm, you want it long enough in the fingers, and they sort of separate them into regular fitting and cadet fitting. Regular fitting is longer fingers, cadet are shorter ones. And so if you have longer fingers and try a cadet one on, you can't get the glove onto your hand. Now, where they wear out is quite significant. If you wear it out on the thumb, that's actually not uncommon, even for quite good golfers. But if you wear it out here, in the heel of the hand, as they call it, that means you're probably gripping in the palm too much, and you're having to squeeze very tightly, and yet it's still moving around under the stresses caused by the golf swing. So if you make sure that you're gripping from the first joint of the forefinger across the palm to this crease that's about 3/4 of an inch from the base of the little finger, that diagonal shape puts the hypothenar eminence, that's what this lump here is called, on top of the club. And that means that you have the flexibility necessary for golf, but also the security with those 3 fingers. So that's why I glove it. It's very popular. I always used to take it off between shots because, again, it was getting hot and sweaty. And I always found that if I stuck it in my pocket and walked to the next shot, I got some benefit from that. My hands, I had a chance to dry them, and the air would dry the glove to a certain extent. The alternative in the wet condition is that you can actually get gloves now that are made of some remarkable synthetic materials on the palm that give you extra grip, and I think that that's beneficial. So while I'm talking about tees, I should mention that I'm old enough that I played golf on a course that had boxes, tin boxes, that were a bit shaped like a pyramid with the top cut off and open. And they were used for trash, actually. But on each of the 4 sides, you had the important information, the number of the hole, the yardage, the stroke index, which is a cunning thing in golf called the handicap, and which hole you or your partner might get a stroke on, an advantage stroke. And so that tin was actually historically used to hold wet sand, because tees are actually not a common thing in the history of golf, only just in the last probably less than a century. And in fact, that course where I did my apprenticeship had tins of sand, wet sand, and you would take a pinch of it, build a little pyramid of your own, and perch the ball on top, and that was what you used on the tee. It's the only shot in golf, by the way, I should mention the rule, where you're allowed to tee the ball up. On every other condition, as you saw me when I discussed the rut iron, you play the ball as it lies.